Now, when you're finding the distance between places that are on the same parallel of latitude, the same line of latitude, this is when we have to do a bit of Pythagoras theorem. Why? Because the radius of that small circle, remember the latitude is a small circle, we have to find using Pythagoras theorem. As I have here, there's a really good example, example 7 in the text. Now, if you've got the ebook, you can see the video on the worked examples. I'm not going to get myself a copyright strike by videoing that, but we'll talk through and we'll do some examples here together. So the idea is we have our globe, our planet Earth. Let's bring up our planet again. Here it is. Okay, so you might see, we have, here's Australia. And you can see here, there's that line of latitude 30 degrees south. So that means 30 degrees south of the equator. So remember, the equator is that great circle that has the radius of 6,400 kilometers. But this line of latitude here, you can see it already. It's going, that radius is going to be smaller, isn't it? You can see, it's as those lines of latitude get closer to the poles, they get smaller as the circle gets smaller. And so that's what happens with our lines of latitude. So that means the distance between 2 points on the same line of latitude is a bit different to up here on the equator. Okay, so we've got to figure out what the radius of that circle is before we can do anything. So let's get back to our notes. There it is. Okay, so I've got a bit of a 2D sketch. Just a sec. I've got the 2D sketch here of what's going on. And so the smaller circle, bigger circle there. And so what we're trying to do is figure out, the angle. Well, we use Pythag to help us with our radius. Now, we'll do this step by step. So, both Sydney in Australia and Cape Town in South Africa are on the 33.5 degrees south parallel of latitude. So they're both 33.5 degrees south of the equator. And that's their latitude. But Sydney is at 151.1 degrees east. So that's their line of longitude. Whereas Cape Town is 18.2 degrees east. Okay, so how far is it from Sydney to Cape Town if you were just travelling along that line of latitude? So if you can imagine back here, if you're just travelling along that line of latitude between the two places, how far will it be? So as they are the same parallel of latitude, so now we have a small circle. So imagine, our Earth. Ooh, there we go. That looks nice. Where we have our, have our equator, like so. Okay, so equator. Now, our line of latitude is 33.5 degrees south. Okay, so let's make that a little bigger. So that's 33 33.5 degrees south. Okay, now let's think about this. So now that line there, this is now my radius, isn't it? That's the radius for my small circle. I might draw that again actually. So here we'd have, that's my small circle, yep. So X a smaller circle, so I'll dash that down to there. So it has a different radius. Now, what's the radius of the great circle? 6,400 kilometers. And remember that the radius is from the middle of a circle out to the edge. So that line there is 6,400 kilometers. But as is that line there, that is also 6,400 kilometers. That's the radius of the great circle. That is the radius of the small circle, because that is the middle of the small circle. Okay, so this triangle here is what I've represented over here. That is the radius of the big circle, the great circle, 6,400. That's the radius of the small circle, the new one. We've got the angle between them, so we can use our trig knowledge to figure out that radius there, that length there. So these, to recap, these two places are on the latitude of 33.5 degrees south. Okay, so they're both 33.5 degrees south. And remembering that parallel lines, okay, that's 33.5 degrees. So that's the radius, 6,400, out to, I'll just say that's Sydney. Okay, and then some point along that line is going to be Cape Town. They're both along that line. That is this line. I'll bring it up here. You can imagine, if I show me, okay, it's that line there. You can see it's a smaller circle. It's a smaller circle. And so that means we've got to find the radius of this smaller circle. So how do we do that? Well, we know our trig ratios. So we've got the hypotenuse. I want to find the opposite. So that's our cos ratio. So cos 33.5 degrees equals our new radius over 6,400. Popping that into our calculator. So the radius of that small circle is 5,336.87 kilometers. Okay, now we have that radius. Using that radius, I use my arc length. This, you can imagine, is the circle of that line of latitude going all the way around, as you could see on the globe I had spinning around before. So we've got to find the difference between the longitudes. Now, both of these locations are on the same side of the prime meridian. Okay, that's 18.2 degrees east. That's 151.1 degrees east. So the difference between them is 132.9. So we want to find that arc length, the distance between those 2 points, between Sydney and Cape Town. So pop it into my arc length formula, and you can see I'm using here the radius I found up here, because that's the radius of the circle. The angle between them and the rest of is the same, to find our distance of 12,379 kilometres.